2nd, today's the 15th, beginning of our 4th week. Even though that's wrong, but it's the 4th week. 1, 2, 3, 4. Today we're going to start with culture. Eventually we'll catch up, even if we know we're close. Today we're going to cover culture. Probably into next time, but we may start socialization next time too. So in terms of reading, should you have read chapters 3 and 4 by Wednesday. Okay. Our next exam is on the 29th of September in this room at our regularly scheduled time, based upon whatever we cover since the last exam. Any questions about the schedule? Culture is, we finished chapter 2, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. I think I'll let you have 20 minutes early. Okay. Culture is one of those chapters, one of these topics that is central to this course. The more you understand culture, the more you'll understand a lot of other topics in this course. Like sociology is very focused on things like culture. So the more you understand culture, the more you'll understand a lot of things in subsequent topics. There is a relationship between societies and culture. The first way of thinking about it is that culture is the glue that holds societies together. I haven't come up with a definition of culture yet, but it's the glue that holds societies together. Who would like to tell us from your reading what your definition or what the textbook's definition of culture is? Because it's not just one thing, right? Yes. Okay, thank you. It's a lot of things that have to do with the way societies function. It has to do with values. We'll get to a lot of those things too. But first we talk about this relationship between societies and culture. All societies would be basically the same if it weren't for the differences in culture. You could drive across the United States, right? Maybe you've been across the United States or several different states. And there are big differences between where you go. And obviously there's infrastructure and mountains and ranges and things like that. But aside from the topography, what's the difference between San Francisco and Pittsburgh, right? The culture. So it holds societies together. It provides social values, the guidelines for right and wrong behavior. We're going to talk a lot in this course about cultural relativism, how a lot of things are culturally relative, that they're not universal. And the more you understand that, the easier it'll be for you. The social values, the abstract ideas of right and wrong, we'll talk about that. Any questions? Should all be in your notes. Culture is both material and non-material. So if we had a smaller class, if we had a smaller class, what I would do at this point, what I would say, all of you we'll do this conceptually, right? I'll still ask you the question because you've been around the campus. But I could say to you, all of you go out with your phones and take 3 pictures of the material culture of this campus or this society, because in many ways this campus is a society, and take 3 pictures of the non-material culture of this campus or this society. So, with almost 100 students or 100 students, I'm not going to ask you to go do that because it would be hard to get everybody back. But you've been around the campus, right? What would be an example of material culture? Right? Material culture meaning things that are created in society that are physical and tangible. So if I asked you to do this, what would the pictures be of? Yes. logo. So would those be material or non-material? Okay. So you'd be focused on the actual tangible part of it, not what they represent, not what the Great Dane represents, right? Because they're putting the Great Dane on more of the logos now than they used to. When I was a student here, it was more about, when I was a student here, they called it Albany State for a while, right? I had a t-shirt that said Albany State, and then they called it SUNY Albany, and they've called it a bunch of stuff. But now they're trying to make the logo the Great Dane, this powerful, this powerful but understanding animal. I guess, but they're more with the Great Dane now. So you're suggesting it's more about the fabric than it would be about the representation. Okay. What else? Yes. Okay, but if they represent something else, would it be material culture or non-material? It might be non-material, right? Okay. What else would be material culture? Okay. Oh, okay, so we go into the field house. Yeah, there are calls for 3 on the field house, right? So everybody take a picture, right? Yeah. Oh, the mirror, right, okay. How about the obvious one? Usually somebody starts out with the obvious one. Yes? Clothes? Well, again, is it clothes or is it what represented on the clothes, right? Is it the Great Dane on it? What's that?
Just like what different people are wearing.
Okay. You had your hand up? Okay, the mascot. But is it the mascot or what the mascot represents? Right? That's kind of the question. Yes? Are they created? Well, I guess you could technically say they're created in society. But these are things that no one's going to say the podium. Usually that's the first one that comes up, right? Not every school has a podium like this. This is unique to this society, if you want to put it that way, right? And I'm not exactly sure what it represents. You can get your own interpretation of that, but it's a very tangible and concrete, and it was made in society, right? Anything else that you would pick out to take a picture of as you're walking around the campus of the material culture? Because a lot of you are talking, I think, thinking about the non-material culture. How about one more? What else would you take a picture of in the material culture? Yeah. Okay, but why would that be unique to this society? Okay, fair enough. Yes. Sorry, what? Yeah. The formation, the layout of this campus is not typical of everything, right? And it's, it sounds like a million years ago, but when I was a student, that's all downtown, and those were towers, and those quads were the only ones little, and nothing else. So this is really important thing, right? And then, did you guys ever do this? Well, you've been here long enough. When you have a visitor from somewhere else who hasn't been here before, and you spin them around and see if they can get back to the quad that they came from, that's always fun. Anyway, because everything looks the same. Okay, so material culture, things that are created in society, non-material culture, norms, laws, and customs. So yes, whatever Damien, the Great Dane, is supposed to represent, this powerful animal, sure, that's fine. What else? What else would be non-material culture of this thing? Now, again, you have to take a picture of something it represents. Yes? No cheating? How would you take a picture that everybody looking straight ahead? Well, you have to take a picture of something that it represents. Right? Okay, all right, fair enough. That's good. My section on academics. What else? That's good. Yeah. Yes. The purple and gold? Yeah, okay. What do you think that represents? It doesn't really matter. What do you think? Bold colors, right? Gets your attention. None of this, you know, this subtle blue and white, those kind of things aren't really obvious, right? Because purple and gold gets your attention, right? How about one more? Something that represents the norms or laws or customs. Yeah. The door and what? Walls. Okay, so what maybe the names of the door? Well, I mean that's a good example. The names of the quads, right? Now, when I was a student, again, I'm not doing this, but when I was a student here, I lived on a dorm, and now they changed the name of it, right? Because it was politically incorrect. So, yeah, the names are important because obviously they were so important that somebody thought we don't want there to be a name that's associated with something that might be objectionable to some people. So the names do matter. So maybe you want to take a picture of the names of the club. Sure, okay. Is everybody clear about the differences between material and non-material culture? Okay. So, culture is not the same thing as society. The glue that holds societies together, but it is not the same thing. It comes up a lot. The relationship comes up a lot. Society, and that's why I said you could use this campus as a representation of a society. A group of people living in a given territory, well, this is a pretty big territory, governed by a common political authority, SUNY, right? SUNY, State University of New York, is the common political authority, and guided by a common culture. Any questions? Every school tends to have a particular culture. Yes. Yeah, but I think you can use this campus as a society if you want. Depending on the frame of reference that you thought. What do you think culture is this campus? Okay, that's a good question.
Like, the U.S. as a whole is society, right?
Yeah.
But different parts of the U.S. have a very different culture to one another, so what's the leeway to talk?
Depending on what your frame of reference is, what you use analysis, what you study, what you use. You know, when we talk about research methods, you have to narrow it down to something manageable. So it really depends on what you're actually looking at. Any other questions? Okay. Culture makes societies possible. Again, what's the difference between one city and another, one society and another? It's culture generally. So at this point, everybody should have this in your notes. So now we've established this relationship between culture and society. We know what society is, we know what culture is, we know what non-material and material culture are. And now we're going to talk about the subculture. And this might help with your question before, right? Are you looking at the entire society, or are you looking at subcultures or countercultures, right? What's your unit of analysis? So within the larger society, within the larger culture, there are subcultures and countercultures. All of you, I don't know anything about, I don't think I know any of you. right? I don't think any of you have taken my classes before. I don't think any know you. So what I do know about you is that one of your subcultures is student, right? You're all part of many other subcultures, but the one thing I definitely know about you is that you're all in the subculture of student. It's a group whose values and norms are distinct from the majority. And the interesting thing about that is that when you're a student, you probably think everybody else is a student because you are living with and talking to and engaging with other students. And it's easy to just kind of think that, oh, well, everybody my age is a student. But that's not true. Only 30% of those in the United States who are old enough to have a 4-year college degree actually have a 4-year college degree. The majority of people don't go to college or don't finish college. Right? It's just a fact. And there's lots of understandable reasons. You know, people have to work. They can't afford to take time off to go to college. They can't, they have all kinds of life issues. But the truth is, it's easy to believe that, and certainly with faculty, when you only talk to people your age who are faculty, it's easy to think that everybody's faculty. The truth is, it's a subculture. And a special kind of subculture is known as a counterculture. This is not just distinct from the majority. This rejects the norms and values of the society. Let's talk about where this term counterculture came from. Does anybody know where the term counterculture, where is it most often associated with? Yeah, the 60s, the Vietnam era, from like 61 to 75, that kind of general area. And if you're not aware of it, the United States had been involved in several wars. They were very popular wars because the United States had been attacked, and they were necessary wars. They were considered to be necessary wars, and we won them. So war was a popular topic in the United States. And then comes along the Vietnam War. We're not attacked, right? It's sort of this political war. And a lot of young men are being drafted into the army, or into the military. And they're coming back badly injured, or they're not coming back at all. And the war is dragging on. And then, speaking of postmodernism, here's a great example of postmodernism. Even though it was before postmodernism, but it was a good example of what a postmodernist would say. Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America. He was the CBS News anchorman. And he goes over to Vietnam, and he does a report. And he says on television that it's a stalemate, and the United States can't win the war. And all of a sudden, the whole wave of counterculture really got going. Because why are you sending our sons over there when we can't win the war, right? And ultimately, the United States, I'm just trying to state the facts here. But it became vastly unpopular. And Lyndon Johnson, who was the president at the time, decided not to run for re-election largely because of what Walter Cronkite said. He said, if I can't get Cronkite on my side, I can't win the election. So there's a good example of how the mass media played a role in this. But the counterculture came from the Vietnam era, the Vietnam War era. And it is a type of subculture because it is not everybody. It's a part of society, part of the culture. Any questions about countercultures or subcultures? So just getting back to you, any questions? I don't want to talk over myself. Okay. So, just briefly, what other subcultures are college students part of? you're a student, that's a subculture. What else? Yes. The club, sure. Yep. Yep. The club. Yes. Fraternities or sororities, yeah. Oh yeah, majors could be, sure. Yeah. It's not everyone, it's a subculture, yes. Sports team, sure, yeah. And even more so here, because of Division I, and it's different in Division III or II, where there's really no NIL, and there's no payments anymore. And in Division III, there's no scholarships. Division II, there's some scholarships, but not everyone. Most of the student athletes here, with some exceptions, are on full scholarships. Yeah. Yeah, there's a big difference. So you guys can see that. Well, you already know, because last year, if you were a freshman, you were a senior, right? 15, 20 weeks ago, you were a senior. How is it different today, being a freshman, than it was being a good example? Well, that's you. You're a freshman. So how is it different being a freshman here than it was being a senior in high school? What's the difference in stats? Okay. Anybody else? How's it different?
I'm a lot more unfamiliar with the role of the place.
Okay. You were very familiar when you were senior, right? Okay. Right. Yeah. Right. That's senioritis, right? Right. You were telling the younger kids how it is when you were a senior, probably, right? And now it's kind of different. Anybody else? Big difference, right? At least for a while. And you'll see it even next year when you're not, the youngest or the first, class in here. You'll see. Oh, remember when we were freshmen, right? So when cultures come into contact with each other, because they inevitably will, there is this process of assimilation. Sociologically, this was expected for new immigrants to the United States and other places, but particularly the United States. It was believed that assimilation should take place in 3 generations. However, before we get there, what's the definition of assimilation? The process by which new and different cultures are absorbed into the mainstream culture. People move, and kind of like when you're going from one high school to a college, right? You're coming into the mainstream culture, and you have to assimilate. But that process, the expectation that people would fully assimilate in 3 generations has really kind of changed. Right. There was an expectation. Now things have changed largely because of the changes in the immigration laws. The United States is much more of a multicultural society, where it is not fully expected that people would give up their religion, give up their language, give up their rituals, which had been the expectation. Now it is more a multicultural society where people can maintain their existing culture, their existing language, their existing religion, and still participate in political and economic life. Any questions? And because of this, you have many ethnic enclaves in the United States. You have Chinatowns all across the United States. You have little Italies all across the United States. You have these multicultural groupings that are distinct and do not have to go away. And even though all these cultures are very different, there are those who have found cultural universals, things that are present even in the most different cultures. One is family systems. Two is some form of marriage. Three is some form of art and dancing and games and gift giving and, fortunately, rules of hygiene. But there's something missing from that list that I intentionally left off that I was hoping you would fill in. Yes? What's that? Well, yes, not all societies have money, but you're not wrong. But there's something even more direct. Yes? Yeah, but there's something that you have to have before you can have laws and before you can have money. Yes? Well, how else would you? Language. Good. So let's talk, and you read about language. And we're going to see I think this is the first video we're seeing for this semester. You take my social problems class, you go, all he does is show videos with a different context. But here we only see a few. So this is one that's important. This is a way of understanding the linguistic relativity hypothesis. Who can tell us what that hypothesis says? Yeah. The structure of your language influences how you think and how you behave. Yeah. But anyway, correct. How the construction or the structure of someone's language influences how they think and how they behave. This is also known as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis because it was developed by two linguists called Sapir and Whorf. So let's see our first video. Hopefully the sound will work. Did we see? I think we may have seen one before, right? Did I show you a short one? Yeah. This is a little bit longer, not terribly long.
Now uses AI to help you write, not just revise. Type a prompt and generate a.
All right, so let's put the closed captions on. Here we go.
In the 1930s, the linguist Benjamin Lee Whorf proposed what is now known as the Sutter-Whorf hypothesis. Whorf, influenced by his mentor Edward Sutter, theorized that the way we read, write, and speak could influence and even control.
It's S-A-P-I-R, not Sutter. Sometimes these closed captions are right.
The ways we think about the world, as well as our abilities and our behaviors. While the hypothesis has faced skepticism, it's been tested in numerous experiments over the years, and researchers have confirmed that our languages are sometimes associated with differing skill levels at certain tasks. One such example is telling apart colors. Our knowledge of the various colors might seem obvious, but some languages have no separate words for colors like blue and green. Instead, the same word is used for both colors, and this does affect people's ability to tell these colors apart. Speakers of the Zuni language consider orange and yellow to be the same, and they have a harder time telling apart shades of orange-yellow. The hypothesis is further supported by the directional skills of Australian Aboriginal speakers of the Cook-Taiori language. In Cook-Taiori, there are no terms for directions like left or right. Instead, this is described using north, south, east, and west. Therefore, speakers of the Cook-Taiori must remain constantly aware of their own directional orientation.
So there's a good example. Just out of curiosity, which way is New York City? From right where you're sitting right now. I mean, you can guess, but does anybody feel like they know? What do you know? Which way is it? South? It's definitely south of here, good, but from where you're sitting, which direction would south be? You know, that's okay. Unless you speak a language that requires you to know that, that's kind of an example of how it causes you to think differently and behave differently. Anybody know? You have to have some point of reference that where north or south is, right? Or east or west. And you think you know? You're not sure. And that's fine. I can tell you I don't know. I'm not sure. I can probably figure it out. Right? 'Cause we're in, yeah, I don't even know. I have to look at the drawing. Yeah. You see the difference though? That's kind of the point. All right, let's keep going.
These people can tell which way they're facing at all times, even in unfamiliar buildings. Their language has required this since they learned to speak. Keith Chen, an economic professor at Yale, theorized.
All right, so there's two sections of this video. The first part we just saw kind of explains what the linguistic relativity hypothesis is, right? So linguistic means the way language is structured, and hypothesis means a proposed explanation, right? We just went over that. So it's a proposed explanation that can be proven true, proven false, or proven to happen more than once. The second part of this video now, or the main part that's coming up, is about how this hypothesis was used in research by this researcher at Yale in his economic studies. Okay? So now we're going to see how it was actually used.
Language could be even more far-reaching in its effects on our behavior. He recalled how, when talking about an uncle, the Chinese language requires speakers to specify their exact relationship, whereas the English language allows speakers to use the same word for any uncle. Unlike English speakers, the Chinese speakers would have to remember these precise differences. Chen suspected that certain features of languages could also shape how we think about and plan for the future. What if some of us had to remember the difference between the present and the future, but others didn't? This is an important distinction among many languages. Their grammar either requires us to tell the future apart from the present, or it doesn't. English is what's called a futured language. To talk about the future, we have
English, you write this down. English is a futured language, futured ED. And that becomes very important in this analysis. Not all languages are future. We'll see in a minute. Some languages do not treat the future and the past separately. They treat time as one continuous period. Right? And because of that, the language is structured differently. And the hypothesis here is, Chen's research is, that people who speak futureless languages will behave differently than those who speak futured languages. So, and you know, it's just because I'm in a room full of college students. It's very easy to think of the 4 years that you're here as something different than what's going to happen the rest of your life, right? So maybe I'm not going to sleep as much because, oh, that's what you do when you're a college student. So when I go out, when I graduate, I'm going to eat better and I'm going to exercise more and I'm going to sleep more. But these are the 4 years where you got to just do, you just got to be a student. You got to, find out what's going on in the world, right? It's easy to think that way. Chen believes that's a function of the fact, and not everybody here is English speakers natively, but the idea that, but Spanish is as well and other languages as well, but it's the idea that you think of the present, past, and future in separate time periods, right? Whereas others don't. And that's the main point of this research. But English is a future language, meaning we think of the past, present, and future separate.
Will be cold tomorrow rather than it is cold today. We can't just say it is cold tomorrow, but featureless languages like Finnish allow people to use constructions like today be cold or tomorrow be cold. They can say be cold about the present or the future. Chen predicted that when a language treats the present and future as the same, we might start acting like the future is no different from the present and consider it to be just as important as the current moment. We might be willing to make trade-offs in the present for the benefit of our future. Conversely, if we see the future as something very separated and distant, we might be more inclined to disregard consequences. To test his theory, Chen gathered data from surveys spanning 76 developed and developing countries in 5 continents. He compared households with the same income, family structure, educational levels, and religious beliefs. They only differed in their language. His findings were astounding. Speakers of featured languages like English saved money only 69% as often as speakers of featureless languages like Finnish. The featureless speakers saw the future as equally important and valued saving up for the years ahead. Even when Chen controlled for a country's GDP, growth rates, interest rates, and unemployment.
It's an interesting opportunity to revisit some of the things we talked about in Chapter 2. He looks at surveys that were done. What's the research design rate? Can't hear you. Yes. What's the research design? No, that's not one of the research designs. Yes. Quantitative is not a research design. Remember we went through the list of different research designs? Yeah. These are surveys that were done before.
The question is the questionnaire.
What do we call something that was done before that we're not collecting ourselves? Yes. Let's say that one more time. The census data is an example. The census is an example of that. Content analysis is an example of that. Secondary analysis or existing sources. Even though it was a survey, he didn't do it himself. Right? Even though it was a survey, surveys that he collected, that he went and got, he didn't collect it himself. So it's existing sources or secondary analysis. And here, it's very important that you notice that he controlled for a lot of other variables. It's easy to say, oh, it's future versus futureless languages, the test stimulus, and it always comes out the way that we expected, so therefore that's the reason why there's a change in behavior. You have to control for as many other variables as you can. You can be sure, or have a high degree of confidence, that what you're finding is not the result of some other factor, some other variable. Okay, good. Right? No, that's just the sound. Okay. Be nice.
Strong predictor of saving or spending behavior. And featured speakers ultimately had 39% fewer retirement assets. These effects also weren't just cultural or regional. In countries where people speak both kinds of languages, the difference still remained. In Switzerland, where 3 languages are spoken, featured speakers still save money only 36% as often as their featureless neighbors. And on a national scale, countries with featureless languages saved 6% more of their GDP yearly. These patterns even extended to healthy and unhealthy habits. Featured language speakers were less likely to use condoms or birth control, 24% more likely to smoke, and 29% less likely to be physically active. They were also 13% more likely to be obese, incurring a number of additional health risks. For them, the burden of responsibility today wasn't worth the benefit of a better future. The impact of their choice is very real. People over 60 who smoke are at an 83% higher risk of death. Even those who smoke and then quit are 34% more likely to die. And an inactive lifestyle can be just as deadly. 1 out of every 10 deaths in the world occurs due to being sedentary. Like many respondents who spoke a featured language, these amount to 5.7 million deaths every year, the unexpected effect of something as simple as language. Chen's research showed that even seemingly insignificant features of our languages can have a massive impact on our health, our national prosperity, and the very way we live and die.
All right, a couple things. First of all, this presentation is done in Prezi. How many of you know how to use Prezi? You should learn it. Not for me, for yourself. It's a really nice way of doing presentations, as you can see. You zoom in and out, right? Give a presentation in an upper level class, you won't do it here, but you give a presentation in a 200-300 level class, it might be helpful for you. Anyway, that's just a little advice. What do you think of the hypothesis that Chen used? That the construction of someone's language, whether it's future or futureless, will have an enormous impact not only on social behavior, but also on economic behavior. Yes? Yeah, our language is broken into past tense, present tense, and future. Yeah. Right. There's a way of doing that, but right. But other languages don't do that at all. They don't describe the future any different than the past and present. It's just one continuous period of time. That's it. Right? We don't think of it. We do think of the future differently than the present, even if we don't use it at all. Right. Right. It will be called tomorrow in the future. But in languages of the future less, because the construction. Anybody else? What do you think of this hypothesis? Now remember, he controls for a lot of other variables. So it should be accurate. But what do you think? Yeah.
As the time is changing, there's a lot more variables that play into it nowadays. Like, I have a personal finance class, and they're teaching us how to save and how to prepare.
Okay. Whereas that might not have been.
Exactly.
Okay. Do you think it's effective?
I do think it's effective.
Okay.
It's helped me so far.
Okay. Oh, it's a great idea. The problem is when you come out of college and you have student loans and you move out of your house and you have a roommate or you have rent to pay and you want to go out on Friday nights and maybe you have a relationship, that extra $50 a pay period may be difficult for most. But I agree with you. I'm not criticizing it. I'm saying it's harder than it sounds. But it's the right idea. But that's a very good point. Yes. Correlation? Okay. Okay. You're not sure. Anybody else? This is kind of the critical thinking that you're supposed to be doing in college. Do you think it's accurate? Do you think it's not accurate? Do you think it's correlation? Yeah.
I think it's accurate. I personally found myself in that I could do this now because these are where we are. But like, it continues to be the present moment. So like, I continue to think about the future. Make that choice.
But you also realize that there's going to be a future separate from this period of time, right? Right. Okay. Anybody else? All right. Let's get back to the slides. So now you know everything you need to know about the linguistic relativity hypothesis or the Saber-Whorf hypothesis. Okay. All right. So I had mentioned to you. How much time? We have time. I had mentioned to you that there was only going to be one postmodernist that we were going to spend any time on. And that was Jean Baudrillard, French sociologist who developed the theory of hyperreality. And you remember that an important focus of postmodernism is the impact of the mass media, particularly television, in the late 1980s into the early 1990s when it was particularly popular. So Baudrillard believed that the more we were exposed to mass media messages, or particularly television, the more our sense of reality would become distorted. Not just our behavior, but our entire perception of reality. So he said, as a result of the spread of electronic communication, there's no such thing as a separate reality from television programs and other cultural products. That eventually we would become unable to distinguish between what our own experiences are that construct reality and what the mass media tells us reality is. But he said it takes some time. It's not the first time you turn on the television. Any questions? We have 5 minutes. We should just get through this. And then we're ready for chapter 4 on. So we will be catching up. All right? Yes?
What does that mean? What is an example of
We're going to get to lots of examples of it in a minute. Well, if we have time. Yes?
I was wondering an example of this kind of, like, news, usually the story a lot of crime, you know, comes down to make
Yeah.
it a little
Yeah, that could be an example, yeah. So, we have an example. I'll give you an example, and then we'll get to the aspects of this next time. Here's the example. Don't leave. This might be helpful. How many of you are aware of the movie or the radio show The War of the World? So real quickly, it was originally a radio show, and in the very beginning of the radio show, they said this is a fictional entertainment show. But if you didn't tune in for the first couple of minutes of the show, and you tuned in later, it sounded like a newscast. And in the newscast, they said, "Oh, there's some weird activity going on. We'll keep track of it." And the next time they came on, they played some music, and the next time they came on, it was there's strange lights in the sky. We'll get back to you. And then they played some more music, and they came on. We're getting reports that Martians are coming down from the sky and shooting lasers. Run for your life. Something like that. And that became the reality that people had. They were hiding in their cellars. They were calling the police. They were calling the military. This became their reality because of something that was in the mass media. If they didn't listen to it, now everyone who listened from the beginning, it was just radio, it was just entertainment. But that became their reality for a period. Their literal reality. All right, we'll finish this up. Please make sure you read chapter 4 if you've not already done so. 3 and 4.